If you're a Dolores Cannon fan, you know that there could be as many as 36 planets. And anyone who follows the late John Lear, the son of the aviation pioneer, has heard him say that there are a couple of dozen planets in our solar system. Rob, I'm wondering, was John Lear ever on your show, by the way?
No, I wish I could have him. He passed away by the time I was doing it. But I was always a big Art Bell fan. I used to listen to him on Art Bell. And I did his episodes on Kerry Cassidy. He was an amazing guy.
Yeah, right. Well, I know that if he was still around, he'd probably show up on your show. Anyway, let me continue. So what I want to present is a new model for our solar system based on the math that David Sereda did. He did a presentation with Kerry Cassidy, and I've included that link in today's video list, which is in the description below. And when I first saw this video, it only had like 800 views. I couldn't handle that more people didn't see it yet, or that it wasn't on the network news. Now I see it has a few thousand views, and that's great, but I'm honored to come on the Typical Skeptic Podcast and help spread the word. Thanks a lot, Rob. So first, the model we get taught in school, where Mercury is the planet closest to the sun. Okay, all right, great. All right, so on the left side, we have the planet Mercury as the first planet closest to the sun, and it revolves around the sun in 87.9 Earth days. That's how we're marking time. And then you can see as we move down the list, Venus takes 224 days to revolve around the sun. There's us on Earth at 365, and Mars at 686 days. That's almost twice as long as our revolution around the sun. But then, let me see if I can continue with my speech here. Yeah. Okay. I do have something to say about this traditional model. Okay. I'd like to pause to empathize with all school teachers who find it awkward having to teach about the planets, because it looks like students are paying attention, but some are really just waiting for you to say the name of the 7th planet. Yes, it subtracts from academics when everyone is conditioned and programmed to watch for vulgarity or whatever is the most crass. Did I just say crass? Someone who does not know what crass means is probably going to say, I don't know what crass means, but it sounds like it's something related to Uranus. All right, well, get ready, teachers, because I'm not going to make it much better. Okay, so this mathematician, David Sereda, with some help from his wife and a calculator, you can see for yourself in the video, the math is ridiculously accurate. He figured out that using a number called the golden ratio and the number of days it takes a planet to revolve around the sun reveals that there are a bunch more planets. The golden ratio is something you can look up. I'm not prepared to speak on it except to say that the golden ratio describes the spiraling motion of the sun circling the center of the galaxy, with the planets advancing with it while orbiting around it. It's the same spiral we see throughout nature in things like shells and flowers. The golden ratio is one of those classics of mathematics like the sieve of Eratosthenes, which helps to find prime numbers, or the Fibonacci sequence, or the Pythagorean theorem. Also, too bad we only hear about Pythagoras and his triangle. Pythagoras would totally fit in as a guest on the Typical Skeptic Podcast. Pythagoras had wisdom like Tony Rodriguez and magical powers like Kozulauch. Anyway, yeah, that's right, dude. Anyway, the golden ratio is so ancient and timeless, like astronomy, that I'm sure Mr. Sereda would agree that he couldn't be the first person to figure this out just using math. But let's give Mr. Sereda and his wife credit for doing it during this particular time in Earth's history when this knowledge helps us all advance toward ascension and a new way of life. So, Rob, I got my...
I'm a big fan of David Sereda. I've had him on my show a couple times. He never did this on my show. I got to maybe have him on, I'm familiar with his assistant, Sharose. She's an amazing lady. But I love David for his open-mindedness over the years and his exploration into UFOs and he's been able to uncover some amazing things. I've always followed David Sereda. You know what I mean? He's just an amazing. I don't know. He's one of my favorites, honestly.
All right, so you can see on this model, David Sereda has put the planet Vulcan closest to the sun. Yes, there really is a planet Vulcan, but it is in our own solar system, not somewhere else, as Gene Roddenberry would have us believe. In fact, I'm giving extra credit to SSP fans out there who heard Jimmy Payne talk with James Rink on Super Soldier Talk podcast about the planet Vulcan and the real Spock. Vulcan is a real planet that was identified about a century ago. For reasons that are not important anymore, Vulcan was excluded from our science. David Sereda has once again confirmed the existence of planet Vulcan. Yes, Vulcan would seem to be too close to the sun, and it's really moving fast, circling the sun in about 20 of our Earth days. So instead of the Mercury A model, where Mercury is the planet closest to the sun, we should adopt the Vulcan A model. Vulcan A. Vulcan A, dude. Come on, Ray. That's the best you could do. Vulcan A.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I got some 8th grade boys laughing right now. All right. So if you look on my little chart here, we see that the planet Ceres, spelled Ceres, has its number of days confirmed by the same math. And then right down here between Mars and Jupiter, you see planet J and planet L. One of those became the asteroid belt. And then some interesting information I heard in more than one place is that if you look at the planet Mars, it has a bunch of craters on one side of it, perhaps because of an exploding planet and some of the flack that Mars received when it happened. All right, so I'm so happy I got a chance to share that. Rob, if you'd like to continue any conversation about this, or if you have questions about this, I'm ready.
No, I don't have any questions about it. It seems pretty standard. So are these the distances from where they are from us? Like, or is that
Right. It shows how many days it takes them to go around our sun. Like ours is just 365 days. So these planets take a long time. And their concentric rings expand greater and greater the farther out they are.
So do they consider Ceres a planet now, I guess?
So I'm not sure. I guess it depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
Myself, I'm going to group Ceres in with Pluto as a dwarf planet. But I think Ceres is actually part of the asteroid belt or something, like it's got a significant position in it.
Yeah. And I just have another one more question. What are the planets that are just marked H, J, and L that don't have, and then N and P, they don't have names? Like, what's up with that?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. These planets are out there. We don't have names for them because they're not part of our science.
Well,
I bet we knew about them a long time ago, but during the reset and everything, we're just going to pretend those are not there. And I think there's there's a super soldier named Apollonie Mandelian, and she talks about a second Earth, and it makes me wonder if maybe Planet H is a planet like that. And I've also heard some secret space program people talk about other prison planets, like ours, where we think we're the only ones around and we don't know what's outside our planet. So maybe one of these is like that, but we don't have names for these.
Can I just say, Ray, I totally agree. I think that it's inevitable. Okay, maybe our mainstream media lies to us, but I think that the evidence for life on other planets is it's not even a question anymore. You know what I mean? Because what people have pulled together with secret space program accounts, and I know that's not evidence, but they're recounting something and they've been somewhere. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say that their stories are false, because I've interviewed too many of them and they all seem real. So it makes me think they've experienced something, something tangible. So where did they go? You know what I mean? It's it has to something's not. You know what I mean? Something's not right with the way things are being reported from the mainstream media to us Earthlings down here. You know what I mean? There's a big separation between the people in our community and the mainstream. It's they still think that life doesn't exist on other planets, where we think there's life in its abundance. So it's weird. I don't know.
Rob, well put. There is a preponderance of evidence, and that we're all catching on to thanks to things like the internet and podcasts like yours. And if I could rewind the clock about 150 years or whatever, why did they take away all of our airships? That's another example where technology would have tipped everything off. We would have been up in a blimp, having a good time on one of those hotel blimps right around the turn of the century in the late 1800s. And we would have looked down at the cities and seen straight lines, rectangular lines, incredible grids that were formed by people who had no gas-powered engines or no electricity. How did they do that? Supposedly these are all people, they're cowboys and Indians, quote unquote, and they were riding around on donkeys and they had carts. But somehow Manhattan got built, And then, I mentioned Manhattan because it's amazing, but just about every city, major and not so major in North America, they all have these incredible buildings and they don't have good answers for how they got there and how their grids got all laid out perfectly. I did some landscaping in my backyard. I'm digging with a shovel and I'm using a pickaxe. I'm lifting 60-pound blocks and stuff. That's hard work. And I also got to eat. I got to take a nap and stuff like that.